All right, we are back here talking college basketball, talking the NCAA tournament. Join me, as always, is our trip to the March Madness, the host of the Seeing Red podcast. Troy Mauriello is here. Troy, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I have to say, it's opening day. Obviously, I'm a bit bummed. Recording on Thursday. The Met game got postponed because of contact tracing for the Nationals with their COVID issues, but we have a lot of college basketball stuff to break down today.
Definitely, yeah. Hopefully that'll distract us for the next couple of minutes at least.
Yeah, and I mean, since we came on the air today, there's a lot happening. There's a bunch of breaking news in college basketball on the coaching front. We had planned to talk about Indiana's hire. We got to start with the two bombs here. Number one, Texas hires Chris Beard as their new head coach. Instant reaction to that.
Yeah, it's it's a pretty decent fit, you would think. Obviously, he's used to coaching in that area. He's used to coaching in the Big 12, Texas Tech, a program that's been to the Final Four. So he's used to the big stage, I guess you could say. So it's a pretty natural fit. I feel like it's one that a lot of people kind of saw coming. So doesn't really shock anyone, I don't think. But that Texas job, you have all the facilities, you have all the resources. You're not going to have a hard time finding 4 and 5 star recruits to go there. The issue is obviously just like their football program, the massive expectations that you have that comes along with those resources and those facilities. So Shaka Smart wasn't really able to live up to those expectations in his couple of years there. We'll see if Chris Beard does any better.
Yeah, I mean, Shaka Smart, coming in, he was the hot guy at Texas. Like, he come off the run with VCU, the Final Four. He done a great job at that program. I just don't think the fit was ever there with Shaka at Texas. I feel like the alums weren't really quick to warm to him. I think Chris Beard being a Texas, lifer, basically, he coached at Texas Tech for a long time. He has the roots to really do well recruiting. I think that's a good fit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, like we mentioned, he's recruited in that area. He knows the conference. He knows everything that comes along with coaching in that state and that area for sure. So it's definitely more of a natural fit than Shaka was for sure.
Yeah, Shaka goes off to Marquette, which I think that's a much better fit for him than Texas was. I mean, Shaka goes to a basketball-only school in Marquette, Big East. I feel like he's got a better job recruiting there. I think that's a home run hire for the Golden Eagles.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of funny. It feels like they kind of subbed out one coach in Wojo who is an incredible recruiter, but maybe doesn't always have the on the court results. And they brought in Shaka Smart, who you can kind of say the same thing about him, right? As a great recruiter, but hasn't really translated to the on the court stuff in Texas per se. But certainly a big addition to the Big East as a St. John's fan. Looking forward to taking on Shaka. He plays that kind of up tempo, high pace style that St. John's likes to play. So those will be some fun matchups for sure. Looking forward to another big name hire in the Big East. They've got some pretty big name coaches now, Ewing, Jay Wright, obviously Shaka Smart now. So definitely going to be interesting to see how he fits in the Big East. But as we mentioned, certainly more of a natural fit for him at Marquette than it was at Texas. So interesting to see how the next couple of years go with him there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's number one. The big bomb came in before Texas hired Chris Beard. Roy Williams announced he's retiring. It's not April Fool's Day joke. So he's 70 years old. I guess he's had a great career there, won 3 championships. I don't think he was thrilled the way the game was going now with all the recruiting. We got thousands of, at least 1,000 players going to the transfer portal this year, more likely than not. And I think this just opened the biggest job on the board. Because, North Carolina is going to have a huge opportunity here for somebody.
Definitely. In terms of Roy, I think that you hit the nail on the head there. It's the way that the game is going, and for a 70-year-old coach who's been coaching for 30 plus years, I just don't know if it's worth it maybe for him to put in the effort that you're going to have to put in and year out now to continue building your program or to continue, replacing players from year to year. For him, I'm not sure if he wanted to go through with that. You look at the college basketball landscape and what it is now. It's entirely different than it was 10 years ago when we were kind of more one and dones or just kind of at the start of the one and done era. It's incredibly different than it was 5 years ago, even 2-3 years ago. It's a totally different landscape now with the transfer portal and players having more freedom to go wherever they want. I just don't know if Roy at his age wanted to deal with that. I think that he embraced obviously the one and done era. He won a title in that era, so can't say that he didn't do a good job managing that. But I'm sure this is an entirely different animal. Obviously, this is, basically having to recruit, not only, transfers and incoming high schoolers and JUCO kids, but having to recruit, your own players to stay on your team as well. So it's a lot of recruiting for Roy. And at his age, he probably did not want to do it. In terms of the job, you're absolutely right. It's the biggest job on the board now. It's a job that doesn't open all that often. It's kind of like the Steelers job where, it's not gonna have that opportunity for very many times. So interesting job. Again, huge resources, huge facilities. We'll have no problem getting recruits to come in, but big expectations to live up to. Where in North Carolina, it's national title or bust basically every single year. So if someone wants to take that on, it's going to be a nice payday, obviously, as well. So definitely an interesting job that's going to be opened up for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of interesting candidates here because obviously their school was tend to stay in the family when they bring in people who either coach for them, played for them, been on the staff. So remember, Roy Williams was a UNC alum when he came over from Kansas. So this is one where you're looking at the alum pool. I think the big one that jumps out is Wes Miller. He has done a great job at UNC Greensboro, played for Roy on one of the championship teams in 09. I think he's a good one. But otherwise, I think it's opportunity for them to go big game hunting. I mean, Chris Beard's off the board. You still have Nate Oates in the mix there. You could try call the NBA, see if Brad Stevens wants to give up the Celtic job to come down. I feel like the list of possibilities are endless here.
I think maybe I'm completely wrong with this, but I think I saw that Brad Stevens did like grad school at UNC or something. So there's some connection there or something to that. The rumors with Brad Stevens going back to the college game, it feels like they started the day that he went to the Celtics job. So that would definitely be a hire. Personally, I see them going for a big name guy. That's like you mentioned, that's kind of the nature of what UNC does. I would think that they stay in the family, as you mentioned. That's kind of something that they've done recently as well. So who knows, what direction that they go, but I think it'll be a big name guy, but who it's hours or not even an hour after the job opened up. So we'll have to see, who they're talking to and everything like that.
Yeah, I think in terms of the names, like they have ties to the pool. I think the problem is it's not like a big obvious name like last time Roy Williams was. That's they fired Matt Carty. It's like that's just not an obvious he went to UNC. He's gonna come back. It's like everybody who's been there is either like really old or like is not proven yet. Like Wes Miller's probably the best coaching candidate there. I mean, Hubert Davis has been on Roy's staff for years. They feel like they're not going to give the job to Hubert Davis. I think the question with them is like, is Wes Miller good enough? Do they make a run at Porter Moser? Think that he's going to be the guy coming off the Loyola Chicago build? Do they go look at John Beilein sitting on the sideline? They try and pluck somebody else's coach. That's the option that they have.
Yeah, even a guy like Eric Musselman at Arkansas, someone like that, maybe you never really know. It's kind of interesting because there is no like limit to how big they can go. You can look at even a school in the Final Four right now. I don't know, just throwing it out there like Baylor or something. If Scott Drew got offered the North Carolina job, I'm sure he would jump. Like there's like UNC is a premier level job here. It's a top 5 job in the sport. So unless you're trying to poach another top 5 program. I don't see a lot of coaches turning that down. So it seems like whoever they want to target, they'll at least get a conversation with and get a chance to sell. They can't really set their sights too high. I think that, whoever they wanted to reach out to, they can at least get a chance to sell their program on it. And I mean, there's not a whole lot of selling there, but they'll have a chance to at least, have that conversation rolling with any coach in the country, I would think.
I also think this might be blasphemy considering like his Duke roots here, but like considering his ties to the area, I wonder if Bobby Hurley would be a better fit leaving, Arizona State. I think he's done decently over there, but I feel like he'd be more of a geographic fit in North Carolina.
Yeah, and he did get an extension, I think, 2 years ago, I want to say. So that's in there. But I mean, those don't really mean a whole lot in college sports anyways for coaches. So yeah, Hurley is definitely an option as well. Even, sounds crazy to say, but maybe even someone like Jay Wright out of Villanova. What if they went for him? He's been in Nova for the last 2 decades or so. So there's a lot of options that they can go in. I'm literally just throwing names out there, but you never really know. But like I mentioned, they can't set their sights too high. It's a premier level job. It's a top level job in the country. There's not a whole lot of people. There's not a whole lot of coaches right now that if contacted by UNC would say, I'm not interested. I don't even want to talk about this. I think that whoever they want to have a conversation with, they will be able to at least talk to.
Yeah. And one job that used to be that way is not anymore. Indiana. We learned that the hard way because when We heard that they got those 2 boosters to waste $10 million to buy out Archie Miller. And we're hearing, Porter Moser, like Scott Drew, Chris Beard. Basically, anybody with a pulse was linked to Indiana. They ended up with Mike Woodson, who obviously played there under Bobby Knight in the late 70s as a good job as an NBA assistant head coach. He was on the Knicks this year. He's been an NBA head coach, not been successful as an NBA head coach. And so for me, I don't get this hire because this is not Juwan Howard at 46 going to Michigan saying, okay, I was there with the Fab Five. I'm going to bring all the young players in. Mike Woodson is 63. He's never coached in college. He has no idea what's going on in the recruiting game here. This is a move I just don't understand.
Yeah, I agree with that for the most part. When I saw the hire, I didn't realize that Woodson played at Indiana, so I was totally taken aback. I had no idea what the connection was there. Then I obviously realized that he played there in the 70s, so that's the connection. But as you mentioned, that was 40, 50 years ago now at this point. So that connection, you wonder how strong it was. Mike Woodson did a phenomenal job with my Knicks, or not a phenomenal job with my Knicks, but coached my Knicks to their best season in basically 2 decades in the NBA ranks. So at least he has the head coaching experience, sure, but to hire a guy with zero collegiate head coaching experience is always a risk. You don't know how they're going to react. The recruiting thing I think is a little overrated because you have a whole staff of guys, so you can hire guys that are, go on that staff, solely to recruit. It's not like Woodson is going to be the only guy recruiting. So that part of it, I don't, totally think is that big of a deal. But, for every Juwan Howard and Patrick Ewing, as I can know, there's a Chris Mullen who just doesn't work out, as the former player going back to the school. So it's a risky hire for sure. It's not a safe one for Indiana. And I think they probably should have gone in a maybe safer direction here with kind of the direction that their program has been going in for the last couple of years. Certainly a big risk that they take on. I guess you could say a big reward if it does work out, like we saw with Juwan Howard and Michigan. But to me, I probably would have gone safer. And like you mentioned, kind of targeted someone in the collegiate ranks, an experienced guy, as opposed to a guy who's going to be making his collegiate head coaching debut at one of the toughest jobs in the country.
Yeah, and the reason I feel like we're spending about 12 minutes on the coaching here is that there was not a ton to write home about in these games this weekend because I said last week the first 2 rounds were fun. I was a little worried about what we were getting here in the Sweet 16, Elite 8 because we had lost so many power brokers, and I was right. For the most part, these 12 games we got were not very good. Yeah,
that's kind of the byproduct of all the upsets, like we mentioned. I think I mentioned when I was on last week, all these upsets, they're very fun in the moment and they're awesome to watch in the moment. But then, you've got, Loyola Chicago versus Oregon State in a Sweet 16 game, and you've got Oral Roberts playing that night in a Sweet 16 game. It's not the most attractive matchups for sure. So we did get a lot of blowouts. We saw kind of the best teams rising to the top and not really being challenged. Like Baylor and Gonzaga. And yeah, I mean, it was great to have the games on for sure, but yeah, maybe not the most entertaining weekend of games for sure.
Yeah, the Sweet 16 is a lot of ugly, either like defensive battles where teams couldn't hit a shot or complete blowouts. There are only 2 games I think the Sweet 16 we really need to touch on here. Is number one, Oral Roberts gave Arkansas a run for its money. I got to give them credit. I thought that shot was going down from Max A. Smith when we had a perfect look. He just bounced off the front rim. I got to give those guys a lot of credit. They probably should not have been as low as a 15.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I thought that shot was going in, and that would have been, a March Madness moment to remember for years to come if they won that on a buzzer beater there. Honestly, they probably would have lost by, 20 or 30 points to Baylor the following game. So in the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because I don't think anyone was beating Baylor in the South anyways. But yeah, what an incredible story they were, making that run to the Sweet 16, upsetting Ohio State, upsetting Florida, two bigger programs in the sport, and then taking Arkansas down to the wire. That's what we love March Madness for. Obviously, it's not the most attractive matchups when you've got Oral Roberts playing a Sweet 16 game on a Saturday night, but definitely fun to watch. It's the true nature of March Madness, having a team like that make a run almost, basically inches away from making a run to the Elite Eight. So really cool to see. Fun ride, and I'm sure that we'll be getting another one next year as well.
Yeah, I think we'll have a fun run next year for them. And the other big game of that round, UCLA Alabama, probably the game of the weekend of the four games of those 12 games. And two things stick out that game. Number one, the problems we saw of Alabama in the Iona game came back to haunt them in a big way because the free throw shooting was a killer for them. They could not handle the slow pace UCLA played at. But one thing, Mick Cronin in that game got so lucky by getting bailed out for the fact he didn't foul up three in probably the most obvious up three foul situation in your life, because Alabama, I think that one's 11 of 23 from the free throw line. Alex Reese has the game tying three. Credit to the Bruins for responding and just dominating the overtime, but I just don't know what Cronin was thinking there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the overtime. Credit to UCLA, because how many times do you see a team allow a buzzer beater to send the game to overtime and then come out and dominate the overtime? I mean, that game was never really close in overtime. UCLA took a lead early and really was never challenged, which was impressive for them. So I'll say that for sure. But I'm always a foul up three guy. Watching as a fan, I hope that they don't, because I want the drama. I want the opportunity for a last second shot. So I was watching this game, with no rooting ties. My bracket was already busted, so didn't really care who won. So I wanted them to allow Alabama to get that last shot off. I was happy that they did. But in terms of a rooting interest, yes, you always foul up three. People say, that if you foul up three, that's the only way that you can really lose the game in regulation. If the other team, obviously makes the first free throw, misses the second, and then hits a three to win the game. But I still think that the odds of that happening are so much lower than a team hitting a three, especially in this scenario where there wasn't a whole lot of time left. It was kind of more of a transition. They got the ball to the shooter kind of in motion there. It was a very clean look, so the odds of a team, getting a rebound after a missed free throw, tapping it out and hitting a 2-point shot or hitting a 3-point shot are way lower than a team hitting an open three in transition there in rhythm. So yeah, UCLA definitely got bailed out there. I would have fouled there. And, but credit to them for how they responded in that overtime. That was an incredible game. Probably the best game of the tournament, I would say.
Yeah, and we talked about Kansas last week. He got punched in the mouth, never got up, now got off the mat in that game. UCLA literally got punched and then got up and just said, we're fine. We're good. We'll keep playing. We're fine.
Yeah. It's credit to them, and that's what you need to be a Final Four team. You're gonna face adversity. We saw UCLA really in their first game of the tournament, in the first four against Michigan State, faced some adversity, came back from it. Their next two games they kind of rolled, but in the Sweet 16, in the Elite Eight, both of those games, faced some adversity and got up right off the mat. That's what you need to be a Final Four team. So credit to them for doing that. I did not see that coming.
I did not either. And I go to the Elite Eight, obviously. I mean, Oregon State, Houston, not spending a ton of time on that because that game was just a disaster because nobody can make a shot. Houston almost let Oregon State come back in that game somehow, but then they hung on to win at the end. I think Arkansas Baylor probably the most fun of the four, to be honest with you, because it was the most highly offensively efficient game. Mm-hmm. I think Gonzaga, we saw USC. Like, they just completely ran them off the floor. That's probably an impressive display. I think those three, I think, kind of expected how they were going to play out.
Yeah. I'll give my brief thoughts on all of them. The Houston, man, what an easy ride for Houston to the Final Four. The couple of wins that they had to get, all double-digit seeds. I think the first team ever to beat 4 straight double-digit seeds en route to the Final Four. It was not a very challenging ride for them.
They still almost lost twice.
What'd you say? Sorry.
And they still almost lost twice.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say too. They still almost lost that game to Rutgers too. And just but the Oregon State game, to me, even when Oregon State tied that game up, it didn't feel like they were gonna win that game. It felt like Oregon or Houston was in control that entire game. The Baylor game too, same thing. Arkansas, credit to them for kind of hanging around. But to me, I was never like, oh man, Baylor's gonna lose this game. Like, that just never crossed my mind. It was like you mentioned, it was an incredibly entertaining game. It was an efficient game, but it was entertaining to a point where you never said Baylor's going to lose this game. Like, the final score was never in doubt, which was interesting with that one. And then Gonzaga USC on Tuesday night. A lot of people, including myself, thought this is the game that Gonzaga gets tested. USC with their inside presence, USC with their defense can really, do some damage on Gonzaga. A lot of people, I don't think a lot of people thought USC was going to win that game, but I think a lot of people saw that being, a 4-point game with 3 minutes to go. A 2-point game in the final minute, maybe. Gonzaga being tested a little bit, completely wrong. I think if you remember in 2015 when Kentucky went into the Final Four undefeated, they got a big time scare from Notre Dame in the Elite Eight, and I think a lot of people kind of saw that happening here. Totally wrong. Gonzaga just rolls. That game was never in doubt. From basically the first 10 minutes on, that game was never in doubt. They are an absolute wagon. I don't know who's going to beat them. They're double-digit point favorites against UCLA. They'll be big favorites if they play, Baylor or Houston in the national final. I don't know who beats Gonzaga at this point.
Yeah, Gonzaga. I mean, everybody knows how good they are offensively, and they play like a modern NBA team. They can attack the rim. They can shoot well from the outside. They don't get credit for two things, I think, in my opinion. Number one, they pass the ball as well as any team I've ever seen because they have very good ball movement. Everybody on the floor, 1 through 5, can make any pass pretty much. It's incredibly hard to defend. Mm-hmm. Number two, that they don't get credit for how good a defensive team they are because they completely smothered Mobley early in the game. They took away the outside shots, and they made it very hard for USC to get anything going on offense.
Yeah, I was really impressed with their defensive effort in that game as well on USC. And about the assists, you look at the two best teams in college basketball this season, or the two presumptive teams that we're going to be seeing in the national final, Gonzaga and Baylor, two of the best teams in the nation at assist to turnover ratio. They don't turn the ball over a ton, and they play very, very crisp offense and move the ball beautifully. I'm getting ahead of myself, but if that ends up being the national final on Monday night, that's going to be an incredible game between two really, really strong teams who kind of have been head and shoulders above everyone else this entire season. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, obviously the closest game of that bunch was the upset is UCLA going second team ever go first four to Final Four. They knocked Michigan out in like a very, very low scoring game. This is UCLA really dominated the tempo of that game. They took the air out of the basketball. This is typical Mick Cronin basketball too, because they play rugged defense. They take the air out of the basketball. They make it hard for you to put up points on them. And this is a Michigan team that was vulnerable at because again, without Isaiah Livers, like a lot of the scoring potential for that team sort of is tied up on the inside. That plays right into UCLA's hands.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that. UCLA not playing the most entertaining style of basketball for sure. It's kind of interesting because this wasn't, one of those signature Mick Cronin like Cincinnati defensive teams. They didn't play incredible defense, but obviously it's kind of fitting that in the Elite Eight, what gets them to the Final Four is their defense in holding Michigan to 49 points in that game. So credit to them for that. Michigan just couldn't hit a shot in this game, though. I mean, down the stretch, I think they missed their last 8 field goals. They missed a couple of layups. I was yelling at them, to stop shooting threes. In that final minute, they took the 3-3-pointers there, down by 2. When it wasn't really needed, it felt like to me, I would have gone to the basket there. Even the one layup that they did get off the rebound, it felt like they rushed it a little bit. So Michigan was just out of whack offensively all night long. I think that's a game where, if you play that game a bunch of times, Michigan wins it a bunch of times, but UCLA happened to kind of win out on their style in that one. But man, if you're Michigan, you got to be kicking yourself because they missed just so many open shots. They had a good look there in the final, couple of seconds to win the game. For Michigan, it's a shame because I thought they were going to be a Final Four team for sure.
Yeah, the thing I didn't understand with those final sequences, I mean, like, you had the most dominant player on the inside, Hunter Dickinson. He almost never touches the ball. I was like sitting there scratching my head. I'm like, you're down 2. You're not down 3. Like, try and give it to him, let him make a play.
Yeah, and go to the basket. Like, it wasn't the final possession, but it was the final possession before the ball went out of bounds. I don't remember who it was who took the 3 for Michigan, but he had like a relatively clear lane to the basket in a one-on-one situation. Go to the basket there. Like, you're going to get fouled. You're going to have a good look there. You have a chance for a rebound. I don't understand the 3-point obsession there at the end for them. I feel like if they could have done that again, they probably would have gone to the basket, gone to Dickinson, like you mentioned, try to get fouled, try to get a rebound, try to, get a high percentage shot there to at least maybe send the game to overtime.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And I think losing them, I do give credit to UCLA, which it's amazing to think how much this tournament changed by the fact that they were in that first 4 game. They were down 11 at the half to Michigan State. Michigan State led for 39 minutes that game. UCLA tied it in the final seconds, winning overtime. Like, our whole tournament is completely different. Michigan State holds on that game.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, and again, we mentioned just the toughness of UCLA that, their tournament almost ended after 40 minutes. And now here they are almost a month later playing in the Final Four. It speaks to everything that March Madness is. You can win one game basically, and that kind of, sets you on a hot streak to where you're winning basically for UCLA case 5 in a row and making this run to the national semifinals and the Final Four. So it speaks to the absolute absurdity to March Madness. None of it makes any sense. UCLA was on a 4-game losing streak heading into the NCAA tournament. No one would in their right mind would have seen UCLA going to the Final Four, let alone winning a couple games. I don't think anyone really would have had them advancing past maybe the Sweet 16 at the furthest. And now here they are in the Final Four taking on Gonzaga. So it speaks to March Madness perfectly. It totally exemplifies what March Madness is in this UCLA run.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think before we get to the 2 matchups we have on Saturday night, I want to touch on the TV aspect of this here because obviously it's about the schedule change. We had the Saturday, Sunday matchups here from the Elite Eight, where we had from the Sweet 16, where we had the 4 standalone windows, and then we had the 2 double headers on Monday and Tuesday night. The ratings of the Sweet 16 games were sky high compared to where they had been in the past. The ones from Monday and Tuesday night down a little bit. They were not as good as they've been. Do you think we're going to keep this schedule going forward here? You think we're going to try and alter it a little bit? Because I think there's a path here where you can sort of do the windows, and I think the Monday, Tuesday prime time did not work out. I don't know if it's because the teams are not here or because we don't have our big dogs here. And we had a lot of teams that aren't as big nationally. 7 of the 8 programs were from west of the Mississippi, which is not as good for like the markets like your New Yorks and stuff like that. But yeah. I think there's kind of an idea here. I don't know how they play it.
So I'll tell you my, maybe idea, and then we can say I always was a big fan of the Thursday and Friday kind of not double headers, but the 2 games going on at once for the Sweet 16. To me though, I would maybe do something where you keep the same Sweet 16 schedule with the the 2:30 game, the 5 p.m. game, the 7:30 game, and the 10 p.m. game, and just play that on Thursday and Friday. And you're obviously playing a game at 2:30 on a Thursday and a Friday during the workday, but I kind of would almost rather have that and then do this the same schedule with the Elite Eight, the 2 games in prime time, but have them on Saturday and Sunday. So to me, I didn't have as much of a problem with the Sweet 16, but you're right. The Elite Eight games, you can't start an Elite Eight game with a trip to the Final Four. You had UCLA and Michigan, 2 kind of not blue blood programs, but 2 big programs. You can't be starting that game at 10:15 at night or whatever it was and ending it after midnight. You're just not going to get a great rating there. So I would definitely like to see that fixed. I would like to see the schedule shift back to the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was weird last Thursday not having college basketball on the Sweet 16. So I would like to see, if you want to keep the times the same, sure, but I would like to see them go back to the old schedule in terms of that with the Elite Eight on Saturday and Sunday instead of on Monday and Tuesday. And like you mentioned, I'm sure that the matchups had something to do with it. I mean, Oregon State and Houston is not going to get you a big rating. Gonzaga, for as good as they are, probably not going to get you a huge rating. And like I just said, UCLA and Michigan starting at 10 p.m. at night was not, very conducive to East Coast viewers. So yeah, I'm sure the matchups had something to do with it, but I would like to see the schedule shift back to what it was in previous years.
Yeah, I think the end around here, because also next year you have to consider the fact you're going to have more tickets being sold at some of these sites. I think the way you do, I think you go to Thursday. I think you have to start like 1 game at 5 and like 1 at 7. I think that's probably the easiest way you're going to do it, because at that point, like you have to, I know it's inconvenient to the ticket holders, but like I think you get more of your standalone window effect.
Yes.
But you're not running to the point where you're starting your last game at, say, like if you're doing this way, you have 1 at 5, 1 at 7. Your second game in that first block start at 8. You have a little bit of overlap, not as much as you usually would have.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that would be totally okay. Yeah, to do like a 5, a 7, an
8:30,
8:30, and a 9:30. Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, that's I think what would be better, because then like you said, you only have that really 1 overlap window there. Every game is pretty much still a standalone game. So yeah, that would work for sure. Obviously, the 5 p.m. game is a little early for the ticket holders and for the viewers, but yeah, I would like to see them go back and maybe use that time schedule for sure.
Yeah, and let's get to our 2 matchups for the national championship here. I mean, Gonzaga, UCLA. I mean, it feels weird that we're talking about this, and UCLA is the underdog based on history, where Gonzaga is the unbeaten juggernaut. The thing that's so frustrating about this game is the fact that, I know I'm going to get my soapbox here for a minute. Like, Gonzaga has not been pushed the whole tournament. Michigan would have been a fantastic matchup for them. Instead, we get a UCLA team that's going to take the air out of the basketball, has trouble scoring when Johnny Juzang is not on the floor, and he's either had foul trouble or gotten hurt in a bunch of their games. I think the big problem here is to me is like, I think Gonzaga's going to win, but this game's going to be a boring game because UCLA's going to take the air out of the basketball. It's going to be a game where Gonzaga has to win by like 70-62 or something like that. It's not going to be like as entertaining as Gonzaga can be because they have to adjust because UCLA's going to slow them down.
Exactly. I think UCLA will do a good job playing their game, but I just, like you mentioned, they're not going to be able to score with Gonzaga. They just don't have the scoring options, unless Juzang goes for 40 points. I just don't see how UCLA is going to crack, 65, 70 points. Like you mentioned, I see this, being a, 80 to like 60 something Gonzaga win, or like a 70 to 50 type win for Gonzaga, which is not, as entertaining as it should be, for sure, just because of the style of play that UCLA plays. I don't think that anyone's going to be able to compete with Gonzaga. Maybe Baylor will give them a game, but as of right now, man, I mean, 27 straight wins by double digits for Gonzaga. No one has even challenged them yet. I don't see UCLA being the first team to do that. They've been a Cinderella, obviously, all tournament, but I don't see how UCLA stays within even single digits of Gonzaga in this one. I see it being kind of a not entertaining game, but hopefully I'm wrong.
Hopefully I'm wrong too. Hopefully they give them a good fight. But
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to end up being. I think they'll probably be close about a half, and then Gonzaga will pull away.
Yeah. You could see it being kind of a low scoring, scrappy type first half, where, maybe Gonzaga doesn't shoot great. You get like a 29-23 type first half where UCLA is still in the game. But there's going to be a period at some point in this game where Gonzaga goes on a run and UCLA just doesn't have an answer for it, whether it be, Juzang on the bench in foul trouble or something like that. I can't see UCLA hanging around for the full 40 minutes. I just can't.
Yeah, I think the better game is going to be the showdown, the Texas showdown here between Baylor and Houston. And the thing I think is going to turn this game is Houston, I think defensively will be able to give Baylor problems here because they play lockdown defense. The question here is if Baylor brings their defensive intensity to this game, and they've seen it at times. I mean, they had it before they had the COVID pause and they came back, they struggled a little bit. Now they're getting more locked down at the defensive end. If they are playing good defense, Houston's not put the ball in the basket enough to beat Baylor. So I think Baylor's going to pull this out.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the same story. Obviously, these teams are a lot more closely matched. But yeah, I don't know how Houston has the scoring, the offense to really hang around with that, incredible scoring offense and efficient offense that Baylor has. I think Gonzaga and Baylor have been the two best teams really all season long, save for a couple of weeks there where Baylor was coming back from their COVID pause. They've definitely been the most, two most impressive teams in this tournament. I think that this game will be close. I don't see it being, down to the wire. It'll be interesting to see, Houston against a team that's actually better than them. Like we mentioned, their run to the Final Four has not been all that impressive in terms of who they've had to beat. It's more just kind of who you match up with. Obviously, it's not their fault, but it'll be interesting to see them in a game with a team that's evenly matched or most would say better than them for sure. I see this one again being probably close at the half, being close in the second half, but at some point, Baylor's going to make a run to kind of put this game away. I see Baylor. I don't know what the line is in this one, but I see Baylor by, like maybe 8-9 points, close game, but not incredibly close. Maybe similar to the Arkansas game where, it's not, fully out of reach yet, but you just never really feel like Houston is going to pull it out. That's my thought. And then that sets us up for the Baylor Gonzaga national title game that I think we all kind of expected maybe at the start of this tournament.
Yeah, I think the line when open was Baylor -5, which I think was, I don't know how much has moved since then, but I could see that being a good line.
Yeah.
Before we get to the title game here, I want to say with Houston, I think I have a funny comparison for them because in terms of their road, you mentioned how they did not have to face a single digit seed through their entire run. I don't know if you were a kid during like the early 2000s on Nick when they had that show, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. It reminds me of an episode where Ned's not the brightest kid here. He's in a spelling bee, and he keeps getting by because he's getting these easy words where it's like cat or like hat, something like that. And then he's like, "I'm going to win this thing." He gets to the final, gets like the third place game. He gets like this absurdly hard word. He's like, "I'm out."
Yeah.
I wonder if that's going to happen to Houston here.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. I could absolutely see that happening. Yeah. Yeah, Houston's been getting by on the easy words for the first 4 rounds, but they're certainly going to get tested here. They're going to get one of those like I before E or E before I words that they can't figure out, and I see their run coming to an end.
Yeah, and also we as an audience here, as college basketball fans, after all we've been through this year, we lost a game in the tournament due to VCU gets testing positive and having issues of contact tracing. We had all these stops and starts. We need Gonzaga and Baylor in the final. We need that game. We were supposed to have it during the regular season. It got postponed got canceled because Gonzaga had issues with COVID here. These teams have been the clear 1A and 1B the entire season. If Gonzaga gets to the finals not to play Baylor, it's going to be such a letdown.
Yeah, and I don't know what the story is going to be on this Gonzaga team if they do end up an undefeated national champion, where they're going to sit in terms of the greatest college basketball teams ever. But for me, like you mentioned, if they beat UCLA in the Final Four and then Houston in the national championship game, and that's their path to the finals where they weren't really ever seriously challenged. That's kind of like a dent on their resume. And I don't think Gonzaga fans will really care. I mean, they're still the undefeated national champions. No one could take that away from them. But, to make them be kind of one of these greatest teams of all time, I think they got to go through Baylor. I want to see them go through Baylor. That's a matchup that I think, is one that would at least be a close game. Or, if Gonzaga blows them out, then we could start saying, this is one of the best teams that we've ever seen. But it would be a shame if we got, assuming Gonzaga wins, if we got Gonzaga and Houston in the national championship game instead of Baylor. Like you mentioned, that game was postponed 6 or 5 months ago. Really would be cool to see it in the national championship game, kind of as a nice reward for missing out on it the first time.
I will also say CBS would be terrified of Gonzaga Houston for the ratings because a lot of the casuals will not be watching that.
No, I mean, I don't know if it's going to do a huge rating regardless, just because I don't know how big of a draw Gonzaga is, but having that aspect of the undefeated national champion maybe helps a little bit. They kind of went into this tournament knowing that you weren't going to have any of the blue bloods in the Final Four. It was going to be, a Gonzaga, a Baylor, a Houston, other teams that we thought, Illinois, not the blue bloods that we're used to seeing. So the ratings were probably going to be down regardless, but maybe they'll be helped a little bit with the undefeated national champion Gonzaga going for the unbeaten season. But either way, I'm not sure they're going to do an incredible rating for that national title game.
Yeah, it will be fun to see what happens there. Troy, thanks all the time. Really appreciate it. Just to give everybody a schedule update, I will be solo for the break between the Final Four and the national championship. I'll give you a preview on that on our next podcast on Monday when we do the Masters preview with our golf guy, Danny Marti. Troy, I'll be back next week. We'll recap national championship game, set up some stuff for the offseason here, give you some teams to watch for next year. And we'll also talk about, some fun stuff. Maybe North Carolina has a good coach by then. Maybe they move fast.
Yeah, let's hope so. We have some more to talk about for sure.
Yeah. Also, people want to follow you on social media, Troy. You have your Seeing Red podcast. How can they do that?
Yeah, you can check me out on Twitter at Troy Mauriello. Mauriello is the last name. I do the Seeing Red podcast. If you're a St. John's basketball fan, you can definitely check that out. And we do a new podcast every single week because with the way that college basketball is, there really is no off season anymore. So there's news coming out, and I'll be doing a show pretty much every week to recap whatever's going on with St. John's. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, St. John's are getting hit hard by the transfer portal. They have a lot of guys in there.
Yeah, it's 7 guys in the portal right now. Just lost 2 rotation players, Greg Williams, Marcellus Earlington yesterday. So, but everyone's getting hit hard, so you can't really complain. It's not a St. John's issue or anything like that. Now you got to upgrade those guys though. There's 1,700 guys in the portal right now. Gotta find some upgrades for the guys who have left.
Yeah, there's opportunity to be had in the portal for sure. I also want to thank you for coming out again. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks again for having me. I love doing this every week, and be back next week to wrap it all up.
Yeah, indeed. Before I let you go, next on the podcast, I'll be joined by Alan Austin. We're going to talk about the HBO documentary, A Day Sports Stood Still. And I still remember our conversation from last year when you left the Big East tournament, how much of a circus that was and how crazy it ended up being. And now we're not all the way there yet, but I think this is an interesting watch.
Yeah, at least we have stuff to talk about. We're not going to the games just yet, unless you're going to one of the baseball games. We're not going to these games, but definitely fun to at least have stuff to talk about instead of sitting down watching, sports from 20 years ago. So that's fun.
It is fun, Troy. Thanks, guy. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mike.